Welcome, everybody. My name is Andre De Leon, educational programs professional for K-12 science and instructional materials. I almost said mathematics. So aren't we all math people? I mean, come on, let's.
That feels like it was Dan's message. If you aren't yet, you could be.
That's what I say. And I want to throw to my very talented and esteemed colleague, Dr. Heather Crawford-Ferry, to introduce herself.
Hi and welcome. I'm Heather Crawford-Ferry. I oversee mathematics for Department of Education, along with a myriad of other duties as assigned. And one of Andre's and my duties is to oversee the PAMST Award. I oversee the mathematics and computer science portion, and Andre oversees science and engineering for the state of Nevada. So we are your state coordinators.
Awesome. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce another co-presenter on this. And this is not just me saying it, because she has received a lot of awards and some money in regards to this next statement. One of the best science teachers in the nation, Amy Brake.
And we should also give her a round of applause that I pulled her out of a session in chat this morning and said, come to the last one and co-present with us so they can ask questions of a former winner. So that's exactly how much notice she got. Was Amy's here? You should come.
Well, hello, everybody. I think it's just, is it Mikhail? Is that how you say your name? Or is it Michael? Mikhail? I'm not sure. Thank you guys for inviting me. I'm just here to answer any questions anybody has for me. It's a very fascinating process. My only advice is it's a long one. It's longer than what it says on the actual PAMST website. So plan to wait possibly a few years, to be honest.
Yes. All right. If we can go to the next slide. I want to talk about kind of put everything in perspective in regards to how we represent. This is the map of the United States. I'm going to drop some information into the chat in a second, but I want to talk to you about how the land we occupy as we come together, and in this case, virtually. You've seen a lot in regards to land acknowledgements. I want to talk a little bit about why we do this. So, this land, the people who are on this land before us, not only occupy the land, but they were true stewards of the land. And so we do land acknowledgements, talking about the space that we occupy, to not only honor the people who took care of this land before us, but also to give voice to the fact that we came in and basically stole land that they occupied and were stewards of, in order to be our people have come over and basically took land from them too, so that we can occupy this space. And so just drop a link in the chat so that you could use this link in any setting, any type of gathering. So you could use that link. You can type in your zip code and know who occupied the land before you, and acknowledge that. So I am going. So using that as an example, using that information, please drop into the chat like what I'm about to do, and talk about put your name and the land that you the people acknowledge the land that you occupy as you come into this meeting space today. All right, and we'll look for that in the chat. We'll go into the next slide.
So we're a pretty small group, and you already have been introduced to Andre and myself and Amy, a prior winner. If the other two people joining us want to introduce themselves, district, school, role, and what you hope to gain from the session today, since we're a small group, we can hopefully just tailor it to you.
Hi, I'll start. I'm Denise Trickus, and I teach 7th grade at Vaughn Middle School. And I was just listening, and I've done a couple of the PANCS webinars. And so just like, I would love to hear from, now that you've gone through the process, Amy, like, is there anything that you would do differently, or in regards to the timeline for the application? Like, I have already videoed once, but the person videotaping me didn't do the best job, but it was good. Like, the lesson and everything is good. So like, should I re-videotape? Anything that you have going through the process?
Yeah, I actually went through it twice. Once a state finalist, but did not win at the national level. And then the second time I did win. So it was, Denise, like the first time I got nominated late in the process. So it was kind of felt more of like rushing to get the video and the writing done. So like I always suggest like to it as far in advance as you can, the video, because like you said, it depends on, like, I'd be interested to see what the video looks like, because I mean, if there's any glitches, any kind of anything like that, it won't be accepted, because I kind of think that it might have been edited, you know what I mean? And so, and you also want it to be like, I don't know. It's like the video process is kind of interesting. I would do, what I did is the second time around is had somebody film a random lesson. So the students got used to being on camera as well. That really, really did help out for when you're actually doing the real video. They're used to it, and they're not like pausing or like looking at the cameras and that sort of thing. But you want to do it as soon as you can. So then you can, all that, the writing process is a long time. Feels like a mini national boards, no joke. And like to always have somebody like with the writing piece, I had 2 or 3 other people edit it the second time around as well. And you're going to go through lots of revisions. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And seriously, Denise, like, I know I'm not middle school or math, but I mean, the process, if you have any other questions, I think you already probably know my email.
Yeah. Well, and you have been math, so, and science is right, mathematics as well. So science uses the language of math. So yeah, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, and we are just in the process of introductions. Tammy, it looks like you just joined us. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
I think you're on mute. There you go.
Sorry about that. My computer was freaking out. So I'm Tammy. I teach 7th and 8th grade science at Carson Middle School. And first year teaching middle school, I taught 5th grade for the last 10 years, and then just moved into middle school. So going through a lot of changes right now.
And was there anything in particular you're hoping to learn from this session, or more general information?
I don't know. I was just when I was looking through everything, this just looked interesting to me. So
Good.
That's really kind of what I just kind of wanted to see what it was all about.
Good. Thanks for joining us. And then is it Michael? Okay. Well, if you can hear us, Michael, feel free to introduce yourself when you get the opportunity. So as we said, Andre and I are the state coordinators. The Presidential Awards for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching is a White House initiative that comes out of the Office of Science and Technology Policy. It's administered by NSF. So if you're on the website itself and you email that info@paimps.org email help address, they're very responsive, but that's the NSF contact information that you'd be working with the program coordinators through NSF. Alternatively, if you said contact my state coordinator, that's when you would get myself or Andre. We do give awards in science, technology, engineering, and math from the United States, each of the states and the jurisdictions, including the Department of Defense schools. It's the highest recognition for a K-12 educator for outstanding STEM teaching, and it recognizes that combination of content knowledge about the subjects, but also that pedagogical piece, the ability to motivate students and help students be successful in their areas. And so at this point, there are over 5,000 awardees that have earned this award over time. And they do build a network amongst themselves. I don't know if Amy wants to speak to that at all. Do you feel like you joined a network?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I really have. And there's like a Facebook group for awardees and finalists as well, which is really kind of nice. And just last night it's a group called SEPA that I learned through the Presidential Award for like Science National Group, was like a meeting kind of talk with Paige Keeley for like in her undercovering like science ideas and things like that. So you learn more about those kind of interesting little talks and things once you are an awardee.
So what do awardees receive? $10,000 award from NSF to the individual awardee, not that's used at their discretion. It doesn't have to be school related. A signed certificate by the President of the United States, a paid trip to Washington, D.C. for a recognition event that has an award and professional learning, discussions with policymakers. You're now on tap to provide information and a perspective to our policymakers. And then again, you join that cohort. I think my favorite questions that we like to ask past awardees is to tell us about their recognition. And also everyone always asks them what they spent their money on.
Funny thing is, I spent my money on the trip to DC. No joke though, because I took my husband and my kids. But no, the recognition of it is awesome because that's where you really get to meet. It sinks in like how big of a win it is. You get to meet all these amazing teachers, and then it's really kind of neat because you also then get to do PD with Department of Ed people from like Smithsonian, like all of the NASA, like all of these other kind of organizations at the national level. You get like kind of individualized professional development, and that was really awesome. Really awesome.
Did your award year get to meet a president?
No, they combined us 2019 and 2020 because we're kind of like the pandemic groups. And so we're the ones kind of waited a very long time and couldn't go in person. The 2019s had received their actual certificates through the mail. So then like when we went, it was really neat. They do a ceremony where you kind of walk across stage, your name, and it was really kind of nice. No, we did not get to meet the president, and we didn't get a tour of the White House either. So a lot of times that does happen for the groups, maybe not the president, but at least a tour, but we didn't, our group, for whatever reason, weren't able to do that. It was still a wonderful event. It was still amazing.
All of the award ceremonies sound a little different, but all uniquely special.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you want to take it over, Andre?
Yes, I want to talk about, so who's eligible? So obviously, those contents that Heather mentioned around science, technology, mathematics, and computer science are all teachers are eligible. Know that there's two cycles. There's a K6 cycle, and then there's a 712 cycle. This year, we're moving into the 7-12 cycle. It just flip flops, every other year, so it becomes kind of like a 2-year kind of cohort that covers K-12. You must be a full-time employee of the district with teaching responsibilities for at least half of the school's allotted instruction time. PAMES understands that because of, since we're pulling teachers who are experts, expert teachers often get pulled in different directions, and in order to accommodate that fact, while still maintaining the integrity that this is a teaching award, that's where that 50% comes from. Candidates must have at least 5 years teaching experience prior to the years that the school year that they're applying for the award. And that could include STEM teaching duties in the past 5 years. Candidates, applicants need to be teach in the United States or in territories, U.S. jurisdictions, and also the Department of Defense schools, and must have a bachelor's of education from an accredited university. And this ties in. So we get a lot of questions in regards to the nomination process. Long story short is anybody can nominate a teacher, which is why we put up information around this so that people from the community, whether parents, people in businesses, students, other teachers, administrators, or teachers may nominate themselves. And all this can be done at the PAMES website that is on the slide there. All right. So when you go to that website, there's a little bit of a process where you create, once you are you're nominated, you'll go to the PAMES account, PAMES site to create your account, and it's really it's basically almost as simple, or it's basically formula. You just go and you just follow the steps, and then you create a place for yourself in that what we call the PAMES portal. And then once you do all that, you'll get a confirmation email upon completion of that. Please know that if you don't and the email literally comes right away. So if you don't get an email within a minute of completing that process, go through again and check it out. And if you still can't figure it out, please feel free to contact Heather and I, and we can help you through that process also. Once you create that account, then you'll go and complete your application, or you'll complete your application. And some of you might have missed what we were talking about before, especially when Amy was talking about the process. And I'm going to throw to you a little bit, Amy, to talk more about this, because in completing the application, it's a lot of give and take. Now there's some as you look at the things that that make up the application, you were going to respond to prompts from what they call the 5 dimensions. You're going to write a reflective essay, coordinate a video with that reflective essay, get your 3 letters of recommendation, and provide supplemental materials to support the lesson that you choose to submit, as well as completing a resume. It's not just 1, 2, 3, 4, as Amy's going to talk about in a second. There's some strategy to it to be successful in this process, and I'm going to stop there so that the expert in doing this can speak to that.
Yeah, like Tammy, I was telling Denise, if you do go through this process, record as soon as possible. But your videos, I know for science, and Denise, I still think with math, It really like should be a lesson that's all like kind of like student driven. It's that student discussion, student conversation, that hands-on inquiry, those kinds of videos and lessons tend to, well, I mean, like for science and math, well, you can experiment with numbers as well in math. All of those, I think, are more the more engaging type lessons than say like a lesson about like a vocabulary. You know what I mean? Like make sure it's you get more bang for your buck, so to speak, on those. Please make sure like when you do have your video being recorded, like I was telling Denise, if there's any glitch, then they think you edited it and you have to start all over it, all over. It really you do. It's kind of, yeah, it's interesting. And then the reflective piece is really know your standards and really know the standards above and below you and how they all link in the progression from start to finish with your standards, and being able to really talk about that and identify those things within the video and in the lesson. Because you really have to like say, okay, at like in 4 minutes and 5 seconds into the lesson, I use this strategy and kind of explain why. The hardest part about like the writing is you are very limited with how much you can write. The character, they count by characters, which is even spaces between the word, between words. And so you got to be very succinct and very to the point with your writing. So that's always something I kind of point out, because that's always a challenge. Yeah, like you're right, and then you're way over, and then you have to cut and cut and cut and reword. So, and also get as many people as you can to edit your writing as well. But the one category that when I went to BC, a lot of us were talking about is like the cultural and equitability portion of your lessons, and where you can see that and where it's evidenced and all of that. That's kind of an interesting one that I've heard a lot of us had struggled a little bit more with than say just like the standards in your pedagogy. But it's a lot. That writing process is going to take weeks. It's not like something that you can just it really will take you weeks and weeks to write, have people edit, go back and really try to narrow down and everything. But it really helps you out a lot. I mean, at least for me, like going through this process, it really was helpful, like national boards, like looking at my teaching and seeing what was going on and hearing the students' discussion, and that just the video alone is really helpful, I feel, in the process too.
Definitely. And two things I want to tag off of. I had the pleasure of watching Amy's video that she submitted. And one very important thing is Amy and other Nevada national awardees showed a great relationship between the reflective essay portion and the video, even using timestamp cues to reference within the written portion where you would find this in the video, which helps a lot with the reviewing process and makes for a strong submission. And then the other part that so they don't tell they don't tell Heather and I, hey, we're looking for this, and this. We're actually, in fact, as you'll find out when you apply, once you submit your application and it's reviewed, and I'll talk about the state review in a second, you will find out everything way before we do. But the one thing that we do know is, and this was a piece that came through in Amy's submission, is that student engagement piece. That is one piece that I know that we both know that the national reviewers look for in the submitted video, to see evidence of students engaging in the lesson that you're highlighting in your application. And so that came through very much so in Amy's submission, as well as other national awardees that I had the pleasure of reviewing. Oh, go ahead, Denise.
Well, you could have finished your thought. I just wanted to ask a question about that.
No, go ahead.
So it's 30 minutes. And so would you suggest just going ahead and showing, instead of showing the intro, just showing the 30 minutes of engagement and then writing about the intro? Like, what piece do you think would be the most powerful? Or do you want to show some of that conversation prior to the students engaging or coming back together for a discussion? Like, what piece on that?
Mine was kind of, I started off with like that background knowledge, kind of connecting it to the 3 dimensions in science. And I kind of talked about, okay, where did we see this in our other lessons? Because my students were designing their own lab based off past experience. So it kind of made more sense for me to start off at the very beginning and introducing those ideas and thinking about it. And then it showed them designing it, talking, writing in their notebooks, getting it checked by me real quick, like, okay, yep, they got the materials, and then they did the lab. And one part was that I didn't get to the finish, because 30 minutes, but so like it just depends on, all I can say is honestly, it depends on your lessons and where you're at. But like for me, it was important for me to start off reviewing the standards. This is what we're going for. This is what you're going to be doing, and all and that. And then it led into the hands-on and the discussion. And then what I did do is like I would talk about, okay, you do have to do like your assessments later. There's a whole section about assessment, and then that's where you can say, after the lesson I did this, and that could be maybe possibly some of the extra supplemental materials, because I submitted pictures of my students' lab, the design, their procedures, their data, but for math it definitely could be any kind of assessments, things like that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I can't think of anything to add to that. I think that completely answered the question. All right, Tierney, welcome. And I want to move to the state review part. So, once everything goes to the portal, we have reviewers, from within the state, from some of them from districts in which you serve. We come together and review the application, the point system, and so after that review process, each state can put forth up to 6 finalists for each state and jurisdiction. Usually it splits even, but sometimes depending on number of applicants, it could be more of one content area to the other than the other. The important piece when you submit your application is, so I'm just assuming that I'm either looking at I'm either in this room, there's either awardees or future awardees. So when you are named a state finalist, you will get feedback regarding your application from the state reviewers, and then you get a window of about 2 weeks, right? It's about 2 weeks, right, Heather? You get a 2-week window to make changes based on that reviewer feedback. Please use that time to do so, and you'll do it all within the portal again. And you make those, and then once that is done, then you go on to the national review, and then that's where the mystery starts, as because there's a lot of there's world events tend to step on the timing of when PAIMS awardees are announced, and Amy can speak to that a little bit more because she had more behind the scene knowledge around it. I'll just say, to your credit, Amy, you took me at my word when I told you once it goes to the national process, you're going to know a lot more about this than me, because I've had people who will, email me and say, Andre, have you heard? I keep saying, you're going to find out before me. Amy, can you speak more to that and what happened?
Yeah, having been on both ends of not winning versus winning, it's very fascinating, ladies, because actually both rounds of mine, it took 2 years. It really did truly take 2 years in my first year, and then the second one. Just know, like, you might possibly get emails that say, they'll encourage you to apply for the next round if it's gone those couple of years, whether you're a winner or not. That's always something to think about, because you could, they say, like, second time you can always submit if it's within a couple of years of each other, the same video, and kind of just rewrite that kind of thing. Just know though, like it's not that big of a secret. The awardees, like, if you actually won, you'll know before those who didn't, and you have to keep it a secret. You cannot let anybody know. If you do, then you could possibly lose the award. So, I mean, as you're just sitting there waiting and stuff, it's a very long wait. Just my suggestion is it's not easy, but like, try and just forget about it until you. But let me tell you something, every time you get an email though from the PEMPS people, your heart rate's gonna go up, and then you're gonna see that it wasn't the one you were looking for just yet. Just so you know, it's like a little roller coaster.
Yeah, and that's a very, I want to touch upon that one piece, because yeah, sometimes there is such a long lag that another window opens up. And so when you get that piece, it doesn't make it, when you get notification that, hey, another one, go ahead and apply, that doesn't mean you did win or didn't win. It just means that the cycle has taken that long, that they want to give you every opportunity to be a national awardee. But getting that email doesn't mean, oh, well, that means you lost, or getting that email is, oh, we're just covering our bases because you want it. It really doesn't mean anything, except the cycle has gone long enough that it created this circumstance. So please, if that happens again, just keep it in that context. And I like what you said about try to forget about it, though I'm not sure how. You might want to talk about tips on how you did that, but. You do kind of have to put it on a shelf and just say, hey, the process is the process. I want to go to talking about nominating a teacher. So let's say that you decide that you are working with a very gifted and talented colleague, or if every time you look in the mirror in the morning, you realize you're looking at a gifted and talented person in the area of mathematics, science, technology, and engineering. So you go to the website, and there's a tab that says nominated teacher, and then you just go to the information page and fill out that information. And it could be that gifted and talented colleague that you're talking about, or that gifted and talented self that you keep looking at in the mirror every morning. And you just fill out that information, email address. Please make sure that is current and working and typed in correctly, because that's going to be the point of information for all communication regarding PAPES. So you make sure that that's correct. Put in the award category, their school name, address, telephone number, all that good stuff. Even though they ask for address and telephone number, it's kind of for show, and also for maybe some documentation later. But that point of contact is going to be that email address. And then as a nominator, you're also going to be putting your contact information. And this is obviously, this information is if you're nominating somebody else, because they're not going to ask you how you know you. So that would be kind of fun to answer in that part of the process. And then also talk about, and then they'll ask you how you heard about PAPES. And you would say, oh, well, I went to this great webinar on a Saturday afternoon and heard a couple people talk about it. Or social media or whatever. And we do. Heather and I also have social media through Twitter. I don't have a Facebook page, but we also update information through that in regards to what is going on with PAIMS. Heather, would you like to talk about the teacher portal?
Sure, I will. I was just also going to add about nominations. I think you heard from Amy that her first nomination came in really late in the window. And so if you were thinking about nominating a teacher, I always tell people like, yeah, the window's open, you know, for months more. But in order to give that teacher the best opportunity to compete, sooner is better. And so that's what I'm always telling people. If you have someone in mind, just do it today. Because if they're really interested in completing the competition, they will have a stronger application if they have more time to work on it.
That's a great point.
So the teacher portal, this is a screenshot of what it looks like more or less when a teacher has been nominated and or have nominated themselves. When that goes forward to review, the reviewers have no idea. And so that's something that I get asked kind of regularly, like, oh, well, they know that I nominated myself. Wouldn't that look strange? That doesn't go forward with your application. And so, in fact, teachers are really humble in general and not great at tooting their own horns. And so that's the other thing I tell people about nominating is please nominate people, because I think we have many very strong teachers who wouldn't self-nominate, even though we tell them repeatedly they should. And also if people you've nominated that seem maybe reluctant to get started, there's a place after you nominate that says you can download a certificate of nomination. And I usually send that certificate when I nominate someone, and I encourage other people to the person themselves and to their administrator, because then it becomes really clear that you've been nominated. And honestly, the fact that someone has taken the time to nominate you is an honor. And we want you to know that, and we want your administrator to know that. But the portal will look like this once you get started. And as you can see, you would just toggle along that top bar with my application, and you really do just work straight through the steps. And so you complete an eligibility form. That'll open up your next window that will let you create your teacher information form, employment verification, and letters of recommendation. One of our tips too is to ask for those letters of recommendation early, because sometimes people writing you letters of recommendation might not be the speediest at getting them back to you, and you wouldn't want your application to get held up just based on the return time. So we always say, there's a reason that's in step 2 to remind you to do that asking early, since we know people are very busy. Do you have any tips about that, Amy?
If I learned from my principal that the principal's recommendations is like a mini application with what the nominees go through. He had to write a lot, and it was on for each section of how he saw my assessment, so, that's just something maybe to keep in mind if you're going to apply to, is give your admin some time, because like I said, it's not just like a generic letter of recommendation for at least the principals. They have to identify the key, like 5 dimensions of the application, and then the principals identify where they've seen that in your classroom. So, giving people enough time, definitely.
Yeah, and you have some flexibility in who completes your letters of recommendation, but a supervisor is required. And so that could be your principal or your vice principal, right? But someone in a supervisory role that oversees your instruction is a requirement. Denise, did you have a question?
I do, but I see that Tierney has one as well in the chat. Do you want to answer hers and then?
So just looking.
That's really strange, Tierney.
I have it happen a lot actually with our district's email for different things, and then I have to resort to using like a Google, right? But I don't know if a teacher has another email. I'm just trying to use their district email.
Right. Well, and that's interesting because I know I have people in the portal right now using a Washoe Schools email. And so that
my nomination came through Washoe Schools.
I've had this happen, not just with the site, but numerous, like Southwest Airlines. I tried to book They didn't take any of our district emails as valid emails. It's just strange. And it's hard to move past that, but if you can't enter an email, it's first thing you have to do.
If you just send me an email along those lines, I'll put the info at Paint the NSF folks on it.
Thank you.
Because we certainly don't want to be missing out on any nominations.
Go ahead, Denise.
So mine was for Amy. Amy, did you provide your administrator, like, did he want to sit down with you, or did you provide anything to make the process easier for him, or did you find out all this after the fact?
I kind of found that after the fact, but I have been a pretty amazing administrator who is always but I've worked with him for close to 10 years now, like at 2 different sites. So he really knows me well, and he has seen my science and seen all of that. So I think like he didn't tell me until afterward. So I think it just depends on your admin, what you want to do.
Yeah, my admin are fabulous, and they're in my room all the time. It's a title school, right? So
Yeah.
of course they're in my room all the time, but okay, perfect. Well, would that be something then, Heather and Andre, that would you suggest that, do you think we should provide them anything? Like, would it be smart to provide like a CV or a resume, or?
I would say just ask them what would make it easier for them, especially if they've already looked at it, right? Like,
Okay.
let them look at it and see what they would prefer in terms of that. What I will say from listening to reviewers is that sometimes they appreciate, how do I say this? The divergent perspectives on the classroom, because it gives this full picture, right? So to the extent that you're helpful to them, but not writing it for them, because then it's going to sound like your narrative. And so we have reviewers sometimes who say things like, well, the letters of recommendation didn't really add anything new to the application, versus those letters of recommendation really gave me a different perspective on that teacher's classroom and work, if that makes sense.
And Denise, I had the first round, a parent did one, and then like a couple of coworkers, but this time around, I had my principal and then the head of CNI for science. She nominated me, and she and I had done professional developments together and planned professional developments for science. So she wrote one. And then the second time I had a student write a letter of recommendation who was in the classroom and in the lesson that was videotaped, which was really cool.
I already, everything's done through the platform now, but maybe if there's so I wonder, Heather, if somebody doesn't get one in, if you get that one from the admin and then somebody else doesn't get one in, can we change that on the platform?
Like, request a different letter of recommendation?
Yeah, because then I
Yeah.
could add a student. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So,
but you do have to have an administrator.
okay, yeah,
So
well,
you can't switch a student for an administrator, but
No.
you can.
yeah. Well, I was so confused. So I asked both my grade level administrator and then the school administrator here. And then there's no one left in CNI except for the directors. And so I did do that too, Amy.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to tag on to that, follow the administrator's lead in regards to that ask. And then I would also do like the same way you look at the video, you have that constant communication process. And, so speaking to Amy's administrator, so Amy's recognition event was probably one of the best on-site school experiences I've had in my career. It was amazing, and the level of support that Amy's administrator, it was very apparent. Where's the banner, Amy?
It's in my garage right now.
So Heather and I walk into Amy's school, and we're eventually led to the multi-purpose room. And there is this congratulations banner for Amy that's the size of a large garage door. So when Amy says that she had administrator support in this process, that's not a metaphor. That banner serves as a metaphor to the level of support that I believe that she had through this process.
Well, actually, that came from PAMPS and the NSF, but I know from other people from other states, we all got those, but their administrators didn't hang it up, but mine hung it up front and center in the cafeteria area. That's funny.
I will say yours is the only one I've seen. So
Yeah, that was my.
So this is a timeline if you're thinking about just kind of the process and the timeline. Amy's spoken a lot about making sure you have sufficient time allotted to the process. And so you can see that we accept nominations all the way through January 9th, but that would be a very tight turnaround for teachers who then had a February 6th application deadline. And so again, you know, the sooner you nominate, the better. We have then our state review committees, national selection committees are held after that addendum period, and then the announcement and recognition period, which is dependent on the White House schedule, which is where the mystery comes in. The busier the White House is with current events and transitions in leadership do tend to change kind of that award schedule. So the group that's currently waiting, for example, to hear right now, have been through national selection, and NSF has sent their recommendation to the White House. So the current group is waiting on the White House, is where we are in that process. And you can, Andre jokes like, you can ask us and we say we don't know. I think that's how NSF feels, because then we ping them and they say, we don't know, we're waiting on the White House. So it is truly on the White House schedule at that point. But otherwise, the rest of it is quite predictable. There was some shifting in the time periods during COVID because our group that got stuck really right during most school building closures had their period extended. And so because of that, the timelines used to be mirror each other exactly. And then we had one period that was stretched a little longer, and now we're in the process of truncating some other ones to hopefully get back to that very predictable schedule. I think Amy's answered so many of these authentically just as we went through. What was your greatest challenge, Amy?
In the entire process?
Yeah.
The funny thing was, it was more of a personal thing, because having lost the first time, I had found that I struggled big time pushing myself to even get started on, like, you know, I did in plenty of time, but still it was an interesting process. It was like more of a mental thing, pushing myself, being like, you know, I probably won't win, but here we go again, kind of thing. That was a huge challenge. I was in the pandemic time. It was like, I filmed in February of, was it 2020 or no? Yes, February of 2020. And then our schools closed, the next month. And so like it did extend the process. Like for me, it was those kind of interesting, weird challenges. And also a big one for me too, the lessons was great, the student was great. It was just writing about it is really kind of, it was challenging to write about it. And also when you write about yourself and trying to make yourself sound good, like you said, we're kind of humble. That's another kind of uncomfortableness, pushing yourself and really talking yourself up is very important, getting past that.
And I do think I hear that answer or something along that lines kind of regularly. The teachers just aren't trained to highlight their strengths, even if they know they're very strong teachers and really ultimately national awardees.
Yeah, and along that lines, a number of national awardees that I've had the pleasure of being in the company of I want to know what the data is, because I know a few people who have gone through the process at least twice. I had one person go through 3 times before, because it is a process, and hopefully that you get support from us in this process, but also you learn about yourself in this process to make you that candidate, so that you all ultimately get that national recognition that you so deserve.
And so these are just the 5 dimensions that we talked about a little bit. Amy talked about some of these that you're writing within those 5 dimensions. And so there's questions posed to you as you move through them along each of those lines. And then that leadership and equity portion Amy mentioned at the beginning. And then tips for getting started. You're attending a webinar right now, but also PAIMST NSF puts on national webinars where you can, talk with people from across the nation. And get a mentor. This is now much more formal than it used to be, I guess I would say. In the past, there was more informal mentoring networks, and now really you're welcome to do that. Have anybody work with your colleagues, have mentors, but also reach out to us. And within the portal, there's literally a button that says request a mentor. And that comes either to Andrea or myself, and then we will set you up with someone who is a person who has volunteered to serve as a mentor too. And then you're able to work with them around however the 2 of you decide to work together. And so that looks different for each set of applicant and mentor, depending on, do you just want an editor? Do you want somebody who's more of a thought partner in the beginning? But we have had some really great feedback around that. And then choosing a lesson, which I think Denise started us off asking great questions about choosing the lesson and thinking about what portion of lessons to highlight. I know we're at like the 3-minute mark, so I'll open it up to other questions, and then I'll also just I'll move it to the last slide in case you were looking for that information. The info@PAIMST.org does go straight to NSF. The phone number there also goes to NSF, or you would just find Andrea or myself with Nevada Department of Education, and or clicking find your state coordinator on the NSF page would also link back to us. And if you have any other questions, you should ask them while I put the attendance link in the chat, because when you're both the moderator and the presenter, it's less fluid.
The 10, I believe let's see. Yeah, the attendance to me, I'll grab those, Heather.
I'm about halfway there. So
okay.
I don't know if anyone has questions though. Now is the time. We have Amy here.
Would you mind if I have a question, if I just reach out to you?
Oh, me? Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
We know each other, Denise.
We do.
Well, anytime, honestly, because I know it is hard. I didn't realize about the mentorships like the first time. And then the second time I just kind of had like my friends and my husband kind of edit it.
Well, and if because I've heard this several times, most people don't get it the first time they apply. And they and they said that on the national too, that usually it's an average of the, most awardees have applied at least twice. Very few get it on the first time. So if the cycles delay, have you ever had it where the cycle came back up and the people hadn't heard?
Yeah, that happened to a fellow teacher here in Reno. That did happen to her as well. I mean, she hadn't heard yet, but then so she reapplied. And I know a lot of people in my cycle did as well. They reapplied, and then they learned, and then they became state finalists again in some cases. Then they learned they won. Yeah. So just depends on your cycle, Denise. I don't, what I mean in the length.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just did the panel for NCTM, and we had awardees from all over the United States in the room doing kind of the same thing we asked Amy to do, just share your story. And probably 3/4 of the room shared that they wanted on their second or third try.
Yeah.
And then one shared that she bought herself pilot's license, her pilot's license, all her training, and got her pilot's license with her $10,000 award, which I thought was pretty snazzy. It was one of my favorite answers I've heard.
A lot of us travel.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I said, I took my family and we realized doing the math, I'm like, oh no, my money went for DC. That's awesome. And the room was paid for, all that, but just, you know, all the fun time with the kids and the husband and extending the trip. It was awesome. That was awesome.
Well, and thank you, Amy, again for honestly making the presentation much more authentic than Andre and me telling you how to apply.
Oh,
Yes.
well, thank you guys for having me.
Oh, no, definitely. Otherwise, this would have been a very secondhand information type of presentation.
Yeah. Well, you guys take care. And Denise, just reach out to me, okay?
Will do.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.